Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jonno White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jonno White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Timothy Wong. Tim is the Chief Executive Officer of Teaminvest Private. Welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Well, good afternoon, Jonno.
Now, we were just saying before we started recording that in terms of Teaminvest Private, you've been in your current role since February this year. So tell us a little bit about Teaminvest
Yes,
Private and about what you do as CEO before we jump into hearing a bit of your story.
right. I'm CEO of Teaminvest Private on the financial services side of it. So it's not Teaminvest Private as a group. I started in February this year. The company itself runs various numbers of different business units, private equity, financial services, in funds management, trustees, and quite a number of other peripheral offerings within the financial services sector. So I think as a whole, Teaminvest Private is really an investment to some extent, it's almost classified as an investment bank if we get all the licenses lined up. So it's a smallish, medium-sized company, but it's going in big places over the coming 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, fantastic. And tell us about CEO of the financial services part of the business. What does being a CEO involve?
So I lead a group of 7 business units in various forms and shapes, including debt financing, commercial leasing, fund management. Potentially, there could be brokerage, uh, equities in listed equities space, and a number of other smaller parts of offerings that really gives the well-rounded, like I said, almost an investment bank type approach to our clients. Um, one of the key things that we try to look at from a Teaminvest Private perspective is there's 2 things that we look at. There are 2 core principles of the company. The first one is about having a noble purpose. So noble purpose could be to do with ESG, to do with understanding how the environment works within a financial services sector. That's one. The second, uh, the second principle is about transferring knowledge between generations. So our private equity model is really about founder-led companies, which runs obviously for the last 20 or 30 years, which are at a stage where there is a potential of a succession plan. So we would come in and take portion of that company and looking at ways of transferring that knowledge between a founder uh, and a younger individual. So those 2 principles makes up Teaminvest Private, and I think to me that's the reason why I joined the company. The purpose and the way things work here is it's very purpose driven.
Yeah, incredible. It sounds like a really interesting organization, and
Mm,
thanks for articulating a bit about what you do. And like you said, exciting
mm,
to see what happens over the next few years. Um, let's
yes.
jump into your story, Tim. I want to start with your childhood and growing up in that season of your life when you were little. What were some of the moments from that season that really shaped you into the person and the leader you are today?
Well, interesting that I came to Australia from Malaysia when I was 10. And, really, I came over here without any knowledge of English um, or any sort of Western background. So I came in 1982, so that was some years ago, when Australia was very Anglo-Saxon and not a lot of support mechanisms were in place for overseas migrants. So I came through that time of change. I think that a lot of the migration, particularly from Asia, and came in '88. So it's quite a few years after that. So we went through a lot of challenges. My parents went through a lot of challenges, primarily because we couldn't speak English and the schools won't accept us. So interestingly, me and my brothers. I got 2 brothers. Were accepted into a Catholic school, and that Catholic school helped us with our English and thinking back now, I can't recall a day I can't speak English, which is rather interesting. But anyway, that's what it was before. But those days, my mum and dad ran a shop, and they were really They were really hard working, worked 7 days a week, 7 to 7, sent three boys to through private school. And, we had to get up at 6 in the morning. We helped the shop and go to school. And then we came back and we still got to help put all the stock back up on the shelves and those sort of stuff because we couldn't afford to pay anyone. So those sort of stuff, it sort of built a bit of steel in individuals. So when I left school and went to uni, I said to myself, Jonno, that I would never do that to my children, because I just think that that's just a tough way of growing up. But
Yeah,
back
yeah.
then, we don't know any better. And,
Hmm.
it taught hard work, it taught resilience. And yeah, so that was the very first sort of, I guess, lesson in looking at how the future potentially could be better for different generations. And that was something that I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think you hit the nail on the
Mm,
head that and I really love your approach. You look back on and you reflect on it and you go, you know what? I think that built resilience and
mm,
probably an incredible work ethic from watching your parents. I mean, that just blows me away.
mm,
At the same time, you then went to uni and went, I want to be able to build on that hard work and that work ethic so that
mm-hmm,
my kids don't have to do that. And I think that's the integration that I love hearing. What lessons did you learn from your parents watching them 7 days a week, 7 to 7? What lessons did you
mm.
learn about how they did business that have stuck with you? And is just as true now as a CEO as it was for them running their business.
One of the core lessons, in fact, it's probably the core lesson I learned from it, is it's about working smarter, not about working harder. My parents, whilst my dad was educated in the US, they've got that know-how and skill, but they're too scared to employ people. They just work really hard themselves to save that dollar. So at the end of the day, you're thinking, that's probably not what it's about. For me, since that time, when we're moving forward, I went and bought myself. So I went and worked at BP and as a graduate and so forth. But then I went and bought myself a service station when I was 24, and I was following the same path, and I had to stop myself and going, well, if I got to work hard like what I did before and what my parents did, I'm going to have the same life. So over the course of days when I was at the service stations, I thought, no, that's not what life is about. That's not leadership. So that the galvanizing of working smarter started to come in at that point. So I was 24, 25. It was just an interesting phase of my life because I got married when I was about 27 and had a kid and so
Mm.
forth. And, it was all sort of jumbled up. But I did have that resilience in my head to say, no, I'm not going to work hard. Or not so much not work hard, but I'm going to work really smart on
Mm.
developing myself.
Are there
Hmm.
any areas as a CEO and as a leader in
Hmm.
2022 that you think working smarter, not harder, has been a particularly important mindset for you?
I think in general it's important. So um, as the leader of an organization, it's critical to me to understand and know how to read a room. You know, to read a room, leadership. It's a word that a lot of people banter around and then throw around and say, well, he's a leader because of his position. Really, leadership is not about a position or an office. It's about what you actually do with people. And one saying that I learned from years ago is that you're not a leader if you don't have followers. And followers really would follow someone who they believe in and who wants to share their vision with them. To me, that journey is what leadership is all about. Um, I, I think quality of just reading the room is critical to trying to get an outcome from from people. That's what I see, Jono.
Mm. Yeah, I love what you said there about having followers. I love the quote: "A leader without followers is just a person taking a walk."
Mm. Yeah, well, that's
And
it.
yeah, it's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's you gotta stop sometimes thinking too much about leading and think more about the people
mm,
you're leading, because without them, yeah, you're just a person taking a walk. I love that. I love that sort of idea. So as you were growing up, what, can you remember your first sort of out of your depth leadership opportunity where you had the chance to do something, but you felt like you were out of your depth, where you were really being stretched, or, you had to lead a group of people or cast
yeah.
vision, and it was just a particularly challenging early leadership opportunity?
It was quite odd actually. So I joined Ray White Group, so the Ray White Real Estate Group, quite young, and I came in as a sort of pseudo strategist who helped with looking at how the business grows. And I was very interested in franchising, and I spent a lot of time and understanding, through the BP franchise process, and also through Ray White franchise process. I was thinking, that's something that I was really interested in. So Ray White gave me the position of some sort of a strategist, and I was only 33, 34, and sitting with the White family at their home in Point Piper. That was pretty surreal. I I didn't think I was at that level, but yeah, no, I was out of my depth probably. But the one thing I do is that I'm one of those that are not scared to speak up, so I back myself, which rightly or wrongly could potentially be seen as either uh, maybe arrogant or a bit more out there. But I sort of try to put a view forward that I believe is right, and it's not always
Mm-hmm.
right, as we all know. Mm,
Mm. Yeah, and I think that it comes up a lot on the podcast, actually, this tension
mm,
of in leadership of humility. But
mm.
we're very quick to talk about humility, vulnerability. One of the words at the moment that it's a buzzword, but it's because it's true, is empathy. You know how powerful empathy is, but people don't want to be led by someone who's super indecisive, really
Yeah.
hears everyone but never makes a decision. There is a confidence and a
Mm,
courage and a strength of conviction and decisiveness to you know to actually, and I think one of my biggest learnings from the podcast is that those two things have to coexist, and often
yes.
we lean towards one way or the other. But one of the biggest challenges as a leader is to grow in humility and being quick to say when you're wrong and quick to listen,
Yes.
and
Yes.
to grow in strength of conviction. And when you do make a decision, to be, as someone said on the podcast, to be ruthless about execution. When it comes to,
Mm,
if we make a decision, we're going somewhere, great leaders are able to have that ruthless um,
yes.
consistency and intentionality. How
Yes.
have you found that tension? What have you learned about managing that tension of humility with confidence and courage and strength?
I would put humility in the same basket as pragmatism. To be pragmatic about things, I think is crucial in a leader, and not just be bombastic and be very forthright. I found it at times difficult to to put my view forward in a boardroom or in situations where you've got some very um, independent people who really want to push their vision across. I do have uh, those sort of issues where sometimes it is hard for you to express what you want to express. And also the other aspect of that is listening. Listening is crucial in what we do. As a CEO, I would tend to listen uh, two-thirds of the time in a meeting, and I'll talk for a third. So I don't talk as much as a lot of other CEOs. But what I do is I want to take it in, read the room, understand where we're all going. Because at the end of the day, there is a point where we want to reach. The ruthlessness of getting to that point is crucial, but also you got to have the right vehicle. You got to have people to go with you. If you force
Yeah.
it on people and they don't want to do it, there's just no real point. Because the results aren't there. If the results aren't there, there's no real, well, you're not a leader.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
right. Yeah, that's right. I love that perspective. So, in your career so far, Tim, who are some of the mentors along the way who have had the biggest influence on your leadership?
Well, one key. I'm not sure it was an individual or group, but when I was at the Ray White group, the White family really helped. The way they drive the business and the way they move. And I'm out of that group now for about 15 years, but in that time, they really taught me the vision and what leadership means. You know, the ability to lead, the ability to get results without being a ball breaker for some extent, and the way to influence people. So these are the things that really helped me. And whilst I did an MBA and all those sort of things, you know, you can read it in the books, but seeing it in action, particularly with Brian White and Sam White, those people were absolutely fantastic, you know, and I learnt a lot through that group.
Yeah, any moments from the
Mm.
Ray White group that really are ingrained in your memory where you watch them manage a crisis, or the way they dealt with people or stakeholders, or advice someone mentioned to you that's always stuck with you from them? Any stories from your time with the Whites that really, for some reason pops into your mind?
Yeah, so you know, I mean, the thing is, in real estate, everyone wants to sell, right? You make money by selling properties, commercial or residential or industrial, whatever. But you know, and there were training budgets that were astronomical in terms of millions of dollars to trying to get people to sell more and to get people to be energized to, you know, to basically run through walls to trying to get sales. I mean, it's a very competitive market. But you know, through all that, we did some analysis, and the analytical team went through and did numbers, and the numbers really comes up to say that, you know, on average, it doesn't matter in a good market or in a bad market, a salesperson will sell 1.2 houses a month. That's an average in a buoyant market or in a flat market, still 1.2 houses. And it really works out that humanity is when we make enough money, we don't work as hard. Interestingly, you know, month by month, that sort of analysis, it took 3 or 4 months to come out, and the team really put something together like that and put it forward to the White family. And usually, in real estate, they're very gun ho. You know, they sort of push the limits and really pushes the ability to sell. But in this instance, we go, well, hang on, what if we change our underlying concept from a real estate sales company to almost a recruitment company? The more salespeople you have, the more 1.2 sales you're going to get every month. You know, that whilst to the layman out there may not be a big change in mentality, that's a generational change in the Ray White group. And
Mm.
and I was so impressed that the White family
Wow.
actually took that on. You know, I mean, their grandfather, their great grandfather, they all started it, and none of them thought of it that way. So then
Mm.
that move really, I was thinking, wow, that can actually change the way they think, the way they move things to suit the market.
Yeah.
And it works really well, you know. And over the course of the last 10 years, I think they've grown to be the biggest group in Australia now. Hmm.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what I love about that reminds me of the Jim Collins Hedgehog
Oh,
concept in his
yes.
book, I think
Good to
Good to
great.
Great. And
Yes.
the
That's the book
Hedgehog
that I give
concept.
everyone, by the way, Jonno. Mm.
Ah, there you go. We got it in early. That's great.
I love
That's
Good
one
to
of
Great.
mine. That's
Yes.
one of mine too. So I'm 100% on board with
Yes.
you. I love the
Yes.
hedgehog. It's the hedgehog
Yes.
concept. Is it hedgehog? Yeah. And it's
Yes.
the overlap of those three things. What can you actually be the best in the world at?
Mm-hmm.
What are you passionate about? And the one
Mm-hmm.
that always confused me was this idea of profit per X, or cost
Yes.
per X. And I always went, I
Mm.
don't know what he's talking about there, because I completely get that. You know, what are you super passionate about that, you know, is your reason for existing? What can you actually be the best in the world
Yes.
at? Really
Mm-hmm.
helpful filters. But I sat there and scratched my
Mm-hmm.
head a lot about this idea of profit per X. What I'm hearing you say there is a really interesting development at the Ray White Group, where they realized, wait a second, we're trying to say, we're trying to look at this idea of profit per X. We're kind of doing,
Mm.
trying to maximize that, rather than realize, we're sort of fighting an uphill battle. Why don't we just leverage
Yeah.
the fact that if we can find great people and bring them in, and they can average
Yes.
1.2 a month, and so it's that. What I'm hearing about that is a change in economy and a change, and that's one of the best
Yes.
examples I've ever heard of that part of the
Mm.
hedgehog concept.
Yeah, well, and just on that book, I mean, we're not talking about that book, but just on that book, I sort of follow the flywheel model very well to the hilt as well. When I was the CEO of the childcare groups, where it's all decentralized. Even Ray White, they're all decentralized. You've got 160 centers across the country, and you know, to how do you manage those centers? And a lot of people use a centralized management system, whereas I used a flywheel system. Hmm.
Can you unpack that? Because that sounds really
Oh,
interesting.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, yeah. So in a general in a decentralized model from either franchised or company run businesses, you tend to have an area manager. You have the regional managers. You have the usual the layers of managers until you get to the CEO. I sort of think I don't really agree to some extent on that sort of way of doing it. I mean, there are a need for area managers where they sort of they work with a group of centers, but the centers themselves or the businesses themselves have got star performers within them. Why can't they take more responsibility? So what we did was we started using the model of let one of those people, or two of those people become the superstars within a cluster. And that superstar then permeate the culture throughout the whole group, throughout the whole that particular group. And that particular group then started flourishing because they follow and influenced by two or three of the respected people within. That flywheel model works substantially well, particularly when I was in New Zealand, where they were, New Zealand's a very diverse and spread population. In Australia, a lot of us are in capital cities and so forth, but over there, I think it's 50% are in rural area. So a lot of the population are outside of the capital city. So you don't get that synergy coming to the office, doing stuff with them. They're 2 hours drive from the nearest town or city. So what we do is we use this flywheel model to energize people and to, but whilst you want to give directions on how things are done, they then carry those things out through influencing their pot of people or their pot of centers or businesses, which in turn creates that momentum to grow those businesses out there. And that model to me is really useful in decentralized sense. No, and I found that to be very positive. The experiences I've had over the last 10 years on using that model was very positive. It saved costs for the
Yeah.
organization because you don't need all these layers of which create layers of leadership, which creates miscommunication. It's a bit like the Chinese whispers when he goes down to the line, and when you get down to the bottom, it's completely different to what you're meant to do. So we sort of rotate with that, and it worked extremely well. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Is there, so for those who are listening who might want to look at implementing that, where would you start to make that shift away from the spread out model and towards a flywheel sort of model to create momentum?
Well, much of that is pivoted around the people you have. That the openness of people, the culture of people that you have within your organization. Um, many people that are in organizations are specialists, so they're very good at what they do. They've been doing it for 30 years, and they almost do it without thinking. You know, those sort of people sometimes can be difficult to turn around and adjust the way they look at things. So what I do is I tend to have those people because we do still need specialists within the group, but then they also have got generalists that are more open, that have had experience in similar sort of fields, may not be the same field. They understand the vision of having a decentralized model that really creates that productivity. And I find it that, if you have it's effectively like, I'm not sure whether you follow rugby, Jonno, but if you have a team of wingers, you're not going to win. If you have a team of props, you're not going to
Mm.
win. So you got to
Hmm.
have different people in different positions, and the better, or to me, for individuals who are, the more different they are to another individual, the better it is. You know, that the debates or the or just the synergy of having different mentality, different skill sets really help. I'll give you an example. For me, I'm a very glass half full person. So when I look at something, I go, oh yeah, I can really do that. Let's do this. Let's do that. And generally, my CFO tend to be the other way around. You look at the numbers, you go, oh geez, the numbers doesn't back that up, and all that sort of stuff. And then we will have some pretty decent discussions on that sort of stuff. In the end, you go, oh, maybe you're right. Maybe we shouldn't do it. Or we go, well, no, hang on. Yeah, looking at it on balance, we should do it. That team mentality is so important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for unpacking a bit of how you think about that. It's a really interesting
Mm,
mindset. Let's jump into. I want to just ask you about aha moments. As a
yes.
leader over your career so far, you talked about that great moment at Ray White. I'm just wondering if there are any other
Mm,
moments for you where you just think back and for some reason it was a bit of a shift for you personally, or the penny dropped about a particular
mm.
leadership strategy. Any aha moments for you in your leadership journey that we haven't already discussed that come to mind?
Oh, I mean, it's interesting. It's not so much an aha moment, more so than looking at it. Why are industries? Why do certain type of sectors do certain things the same way? Um, I spent 12 years in childcare, so I could talk about the early learning sector. You know, there's a firm belief in the early learning sector that if you provide good quality education, good quality centers, good quality um, staff and so forth and training and stuff, you're not going to make any money because the revenue generation is very low, and the costs are quite extraordinarily high, and so the balance of that, you've got to become profitable, you have to take away some of the quality so then the profit is there in the bottom line for the shareholders. I completely disagree with that. It's not an aha moment, but then when you again did the same as what I did with Ray White, you look at it and go, well, look, families are putting the children into your centres. They're not going to do it if you've got dodgy staff and the furniture and equipment are very poorly maintained. So what you tend to look at is you tend to go, well, maybe people will pay a bit extra if you can provide better things, which in turn, what we did was we then started bringing in things that really galvanizes parents who wants their children to have a better education. And in actual fact, our margin for many of the centres went up by between 6 to 7%. Now it's not really a aha moment, but it's a moment where you think,
Mm,
why the industries and sectors, just run it the way they run it all the time? Shouldn't there be a disruptor, or not so much disruptor, but isn't there a way of looking at it from basic core principle is that we're educating children between the age of 18 months to 5 years. There's certain needs
mm,
required for each of those children. Let's just look at a pure basic and let's just offer as much as we can on that side. On the other side, then we will tell the parents about it. The parents will see what we can offer,
mm,
and it sort of gels in really well. And the profitability side of it is that when you started seeing children enthused and wanting to be part of the setup, parents loved it, and parents are prepared to pay
yeah.
for their children to be looked after. So it sort of works. Sort of works.
Yeah, what I'm hearing there as well, and I think this is really important for listeners, is that the biggest challenge in the childcare industry was actually something that you and the
Mm,
team were able to change your perspective on, and it then becomes a point of difference. And I think that's
mm,
very hard to see when you're the one on the court playing. It's hard to
mm,
see, particularly if you've been in an industry for a long time. But there's lots you
mm,
can do to articulate that. And when you can take the biggest challenge in your industry and turn it on its head and make it and see the opportunity in it, that's where, like you
yeah.
did with that in childcare, it
Mm,
becomes it
mm,
becomes a legitimate point of difference. And it's so a point of difference. It's easy to talk about, but an actual point of difference that is a real game changer is like a
mm,
gold nugget for any organization in any industry. It's such a
yes.
it is a really hard thing to articulate, and once you get it
Yeah.
like you did there, and then it the fruit showed in the numbers.
and those triggers and pivots really come from listening and understanding of the sector. It won't come to you overnight, but it will take time. So time and pragmatism is still very important to make sure you get the right strategy. No? Hmm.
100%. Well, as we start wrapping up, let's jump into Leadership Express. You already mentioned Jim Collins' Good to Great, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes.
Is there another
Right.
is there another book that you that, as well as Good to Great, which I just double that recommendation, one of my top 5 of all time. Any other books that
Yes.
you gift to people a lot, Tim, or you recommend a lot?
I, I'm not really a book gifter, but Good to Great really had a lot of impact on me. And I remember years ago, I can't remember the author, but the E-Myth. I'm not sure whether you heard of the E-Myth. A little while ago, this would be about 20, 25 years ago, when I started
Yes.
my own business, I used to, I read this book, The E-Myth. It says that, well, look, it's to be an entrepreneur, it's almost like a seizure, right? So a lot of people
Mm.
fail because they think that they can do it better than their boss and they can run it better and all that. And then when they come to the crunch, they go, "Oh crap! I need to do BAS. I need to do, I need to do tax. I need to get bookkeepers. I need to get all this," and things just fall apart. So that also proved to me that entrepreneurs and possibly success in business doesn't necessarily mean that or it's not an outcome that you would get if you start your own business. That
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that gave me the vision a little bit back then, and then Good to Great really helped me galvanize the understanding of how a business should be run.
Yeah. The E Myth, Michael Gerber,
That's
and
it, Michael Gerber.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, Michael Gerber, great
Mm,
book, and really,
mm,
yeah, great because it's all about the perspective, isn't it? I think one of the
yes.
that really challenged me as well because that idea that he says in the book that if you are running a business yourself that
Yep.
relies on you and stops when you're not
Mm,
working, then you don't have a
mm,
business. You just have the worst job ever.
yep.
and
That's
and
it.
I was like,
That's it.
oh wow, that's
That's it.
yeah. So no,
Absolutely.
it's a really good one for people to check out.
Mm,
Awesome. Okay, well, next question. What
mm,
is one habit? I didn't. This wasn't in the notes, so I'm just
sure.
springing this one on you. Is there a habit that
Yep.
you think in life, in leadership, if you had to pick one, is a great
Yep.
habit for anyone to consider in their life, particularly for people out there who want to become better leaders?
Um, Now this is personal, so I'm not sure whether this means a lot to many people. But to me, I love to get up early. I get up early. I do exercise. I do my routine, but I try to get into the office by 7:30. You know, I want to lead by example. To me, that's crucial. A lot of people said, "Oh, look, that's not that important," especially post COVID, where people work from home and the likes. I still work out of the office. Now, there's no stipulation as to whether an individual needs to come to the office or not. But if the CEO is in the office, generally many of them will turn up in the office. I like that camaraderie. So the answer to that question is that I love to get up early. I love to get up early and get cracking on the day, and you know,
Mm.
I don't tend to stay late. I tend to stay till maybe 5 or 6, but I don't. But I think that early rise is it really set up your day.
Yeah, yeah. And what time when you
Mm.
say waking up early? Are you a 6 a.m., 4
Five,
a.m.? What sort of time?
no, 5, but I get up between 5 to 5:30.
5 and
At the
5:30.
great
Yeah,
dismay to
yeah.
my wife. Yeah, she
Yeah.
and I make a bit of noise too, which is unfortunate. But anyway,
Yes, that's right. She's not such a big fan of the early.
no,
She's not
no,
necessarily an early riser. No, I love that.
yes,
That's
no.
yeah, great habit. Yeah. Okay. What about when it comes to one-on-one meetings? Do you have any advice for
Mhm.
leaders about how to run a great one-on-one meeting with a team member or a direct report that you have?
Again, I guess it depends on what the meeting's about. Generally, I love to hear them talk. So I use open-ended questions like, how's it going? Now that you've been in a job for a year, what's your favorite parts of it? What are the least part of your role that you're doing? Those sort of open-ended questions, and through time, and well, first and foremost, that creates trust. After a while, it creates trust, and that trust then relates into job satisfaction. Job satisfaction is that then the turnover sort of goes down, so you don't lose as many people. For me, the one-on-one time is very important. In fact, I'd like to do it over coffee or over lunch, just to get them away from the office, and think about and think about answers that are not robotic. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. Getting away from the office. That's really. I know it sounds simple, but it's such a. I also think it's really great for hiring and interviews,
Mm,
because
mm,
if you can get people out of the sitting across a desk from you or
mm.
from a group, and at least one of the different parts, and even sitting down at a cafe and just having a chat, and you get to
Yeah,
know what people are like a bit more because they let their guard down, and you can sort of it's not that really sort of stale interview,
yeah,
feeling. It's a bit different.
yeah.
So yeah, great
Mm.
thought. Okay, couple more questions. This one can be lighthearted or
Hmm.
serious. What is a
Yep.
movie or TV show that really impacted you?
I don't have one. Look, I'm a cricket nuffy, so I love watching cricket and rugby, and I'm a very sports mad individual. And
Yeah, yeah.
although I'm not very good at it now, I'm a bit old now, but also I don't tend to watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of news and the current affairs and that sort of stuff, but not tend to be movies. I'm sorry.
No. Sport 100% counts as a
Yes.
sports fanatic myself. Soccer's my number one sport, or football for those listeners on
Right.
the other side of the world, in the UK. But
Right.
cricket also. I used to watch anything growing up when there were only a few channels. I remember watching the lawn bowls. If that was on, I'd watch that, and because I was
Yes.
there weren't as many options as today. What's your ultimate sports? Is there any sports event, footy, cricket, where no matter what happens, um, you are you are on the couch watching that, or even at the venue? Any
Yes.
sort of favorite sports
Yes.
events every year?
Yeah, two. The Bledisloe. I love the Wallabies. I'm obviously Australian, so I follow the Wallabies, and even though we get smashed every year by the All Blacks, I remember paying for satellite when I was at work. I had a work trip in Vietnam in Da Nang, and I paid for I think I paid might have been about $20 to have satellite just for that particular game at Bledisloe at that time. The other one that I don't miss, and I always watch
Mm.
it. Doesn't matter where I am around the world. And again, I've watched it in Malaysia. I've watched it in New York. It's the state of origin. So I'm a
Yes.
I'm a Queensland I'm a Queenslander through and through, and very much I don't think I've ever missed one since I came to Australia. To be honest, yeah.
Yeah. The
There you
state of
go.
origin for those outside of Australia, the state of origin and the Bledisloe is great as well because
Yes,
people should look up the All Blacks, which is the New Zealand rugby union team. There's, I
mm,
think, do they still have that record at their one of their fields where it's been 14 or
yes,
15 years or something? That's still
yes.
coming.
I believe
Yeah.
I believe they call it the House of Pain for all the
Yeah,
all the away
yeah.
teams that go there.
Oh, it's one of those records that you go, okay, it's past 10 years, it's been long enough now, and it just keeps going. We keep losing the Australians, but the state of origin
Yes,
is these two states in Australia, New South Wales, and Queensland. I'm a Queenslander as well, and
yes,
yeah, I'm very much the same. Although it has a bit of a similar, which is good for us Queenslanders, not so good right now.
yes.
But it must have been close to 10 years where we won 9 out of 10 or something. It
Yeah,
was
we
it was
won 11
similar.
out of 12, I think.
It
Yes,
was yeah,
yes,
it was
yes,
it was good as a Queenslander, but to all our
yes.
New South Wales fans listening, sorry to bring that memory back. That was
And
painful.
the best
So
thing
no,
about that streak was that
yeah,
I live in Sydney at that time. Fantastic. There
ah,
was great
yeah.
bantering in the office.
That's that's right because everyone would have been absolutely ready to
Yep.
you know
Mm.
you would have been in the minority, and then
Yes,
yet
absolutely.
another win for Queensland. Yeah, it was definitely a good time for So yeah, for
Yes.
sports fanatics outside of Australia, check out the Bledisloe, check out State of Origin, two of the best sports events in Australia. They're great
Yeah.
recommendations. Last question, Tim.
Mm.
If you could only
Mm-hmm.
give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you
Yeah.
say to them?
Mm-hmm. Or young leaders generally are quite wishy-washy when it comes to certain things. Back yourself. That is so important. Uh, Numbers and words on pages, and look at P&Ls, you look at all the explanations and stuff. They all mean important things, and yes, it does. But at the end of the day, your gut feel will determine what's right and what's not right. Don't push the gut feel down the list, bring it
Mm.
up the list.
Hmm.
It's just as important as understanding the numbers as, you look at something, you go, geez, that will work. Even though the numbers may be a little bit if they're on the borderline, but the gut feels that will work, chances are it will work.
Yeah, great thoughts. Wonderful place to
Mm.
land. So, for people who've really enjoyed your story and your thoughts on leadership, where can they find you online, and also find the organisation too if they want to connect with you at
Yeah.
Teaminvest?
So Teaminvest Private.com.au is it's our email address, and you can find me on either LinkedIn or Facebook and those sort of social media places.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. Such a fun episode chatting with Tim about so many different aspects of leadership and work ethic. Growing up watching his parents 7 days a week, 7 to 7, and yeah, just I just love these stories, which I've heard today from Tim. Don't forget, for our listeners, I also have the Jonno White Leadership Podcast and the Leadership Question of the Day podcast, two other places you can go to continue to invest in your leadership. But I want to finish today by saying a massive thank you to you, Tim, for being so generous with your time, for sharing some brilliant stories, and for being the first person to give a movie TV show recommendation about sporting events, which I'm just so excited because I'm such a sports nut as well. So I loved that recommendation. But in all seriousness, it was a real joy to spend time together. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure, Jonno, and I loved every minute of it. So thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org leadership.com/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jonno White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.